Come across a case of a young Lebanese woman who was a tourist in Egypt, Mona el-Mazbouh. Her case has attracted a lot of attention between the two countries because of the implications for dissent in Egypt, women's rights, and a number of other issues. So, this young woman was traveling in Egypt and she um, experienced problems of sexual harassment of taxi drivers, of men in the street, and others. And she made a Facebook video in which she spoke about this. Now, as I understand it, that Facebook video, I don't speak Arabic, Egyptian, or Lebanese, so I don't speak the native language, but apparently she uh, was quite vocal. Um, she said Egyptians deserve what they get under Sisi. She called him unjust, and she said Egyptian men. Um, well, apparently she got into this tirade against Egyptians. Now, I think maybe she could have worded it better. Rather than vilifying all Egyptians, she maybe should have worded it better. Her lawyers are going to claim that she has an anger problem because of a blood clot, some sort of medical condition. Apparently, she'd also had things stolen while she was there. Anyway, at Cairo airport, she was arrested. Now, this was after making an apology video in which she retracted her sweeping statements about all Egyptians. But she was arrested, and she is facing up to 8 years in jail. 8 years in jail for defaming Egypt. Um, I find that very alarming for a few reasons. First of all, I believe her because Egypt, it's no secret, has a severe problem with sexual harassment. Um, Various reports are showing that something like, I'm not going to get into the figures, but a very significant portion of Egyptian women have reported sexual harassment. So this is absolutely something I believe. I think she's telling the truth about that. Instead of targeting her, why aren't the authorities doing something about this chronic problem? Now, like I say, maybe her rant was undiplomatic and maybe she should have worded it better. But 8 years? This reminds me of, the fact that she's criticizing Sisi is just another indicator of how these so-called strongman leaders are actually very weak. They've got very thin skin. Erdogan in Turkey is another prominent example, Xi Jinping in China, and there's others. These so-called strongmen who are actually weak men when it comes to personal criticism. Egypt is a country with a chronically bad human rights record, and this is yet another stark reminder of it. Now, I hope she is cleared, but the very fact that she is facing the possibility of 8 years behind bars, ostensibly because she's defaming the Egyptian people, well, she's already apologized for that, but she is the victim here of sexual harassment and a theft. So instead of punishing her, they should be looking at that and considering how women are treated in their country. I mean, this is not to say Egypt's the only country with a problem of violence or sexual harassment against women. And of course, Western countries aren't perfect. But Western countries do not punish women for being the victims of sexual harassment. You would never have a situation in the West where a woman is threatened with jail for being angry over what she has went through. That just would not happen. So yes, there is a difference. And this is regressive, it's frankly barbaric, um, and it's utterly shameful. Egypt is one of the world's great civilizations, and look what we have, a situation that is now reduced to this sort of regressive. I think it's disgusting. Even if you're Egyptian and you were offended by what she said, I can understand that because she was generalizing from what I understand, and she could have worded it better. But she'd been through an ordeal. She'd been sexually harassed. She'd had things stolen. She was presumably very upset, as is totally understandable. She shouldn't have generalized all Egyptians, but the fact she's being threatened with 8 years, like I said, it's another stark reminder of Egypt's brutal human rights record. And the nationalistic Egyptians, instead of attacking this young woman, why don't you look in the mirror and actually consider, well, there's a problem here. It's a damn disgrace. And this is another example, we're very close to the Egyptian government. Um, I really think Western liberal democracies should do more to speak up on allies that have a brutal human rights track record. We shouldn't have a policy of being apathetic or silent just because we have strong military links. What's wrong is wrong. And Sisi is just Mubarak Part 2. That's very obvious. That's a tragedy of the situation in Egypt. It seems nothing has changed since the Arab Spring. You had the hopes of thousands of young people who wanted to see change in their country, and it looks like all that turmoil, all that bloodshed, and it's back to the status quo. I see no difference between Sisi and Mubarak, and that's tragic. I'll leave it there. But 8 years for being angry. That's disgusting. It's a grossly disproportionate penalty. Final word. Those who say, "Oh, their country, their rules," that's a moronic statement because under that logic, you could condone any sorts of human rights abuses, no matter what. Under that logic, you can condone dissidents being sent to gulags and the most oppressive regimes on earth. So I think it's an excuse I have little time for when it comes to severe human rights abuses. I hope she's cleared, but she should not be charged with that in the first place. It's a damn disgrace. Not that Lebanon is much better, but it's a disgrace.